Thought I'd do a little video to show you my arcade cabinet and the modifications I've done to it over the last few months. This is a Video World arcade cabinet that I picked up a few months ago now, and it's a cabinet that's from the early 90s. It did have a 60-in-1 jammer card with some of the old games on it from the mid to late 80s, and what I've done over the last few months is done a few modifications, which I'm going to show you what I've done. So it used to be quite a wide cabinet, deep cabinet. I cut the cabinet in half so that it saved a bit of space for me. The reason it was so deep was back in the 90s these cabinets would have a CRT monitor in them, and they're big beasts, so it needed a lot of room to house that CRT. The first thing I did was I stripped it out to its bare bones, removed the CRT and put a standard LCD monitor in which allowed me to then cut the cabinet into half. I've added an X-Arcade control panel on the front, cut the old one away and installed this one. I had this X-Arcade tank stick for about 10 years, slotted it into place, put a couple of shelf brackets to hold it in, and that allows me to slide it in and out when I want. Done a few mods to this as well from when you would purchase it from X-Arcade. I added the illuminated buttons that you can see, blue for 1 player, red for 2 player. I'm in the process of upgrading the white buttons, so it used to just have 8 buttons for player 1, 8 buttons for player 2, and a 1 player, 2 player start. I added a coin button, so that gives me the option to press that and add a credit. I've also added a pause button, so I can pause the game if I get interrupted. I am able to use the coin mechanism to put coins in as well, so I have the coin mechanism down the bottom here, which is the original one. I've set that up to accept coins. 20p gives me 2 credits. I added a light to the reject button here to illuminate that by taking the power supply from the credit board of the Mars coin mechanism that was already in there, took the LED power from that, and I installed a little LED button there which you can see connected in. That then gives me the illumination. Probably going to spray this up at some point, tidy it up. I've got a replacement plastic front here because this one's a bit tatty, so I'm going to do that soon, upgrade that bit. But yeah, happy with that. Because I'm running this on a Raspberry Pi, and I'll show you the back of the cabinet in a minute, I installed under the bottom of here a keyboard, and the keyboard allows me to get to the function of the Raspberry Pi. So that was a simple shelf unit which slides in and out on rollers, so it's easily accessible. I can get in and make any mods I want to the Raspberry Pi. The other mod I made to the front of the cabinet was the marquee. The marquee was never illuminated. I added a strip LED light in behind there, which now means it's nice and bright and looks more the part. I've added on the control panel, I've added a spin track spinner, which you can just about see there. There's the spinner. What this does is allows me to play games like Arkanoid, Tempest. I can spin that around and it gives me a good arcade feel, as opposed to trying to use the joystick, which is not ideal. When I installed the illuminated buttons, I also changed the buttons. These used to be a concave button. They were okay, but they were a bit hard to press and a bit noisy, so I added these convex style buttons and they give me a nice good feel, and they're not too loud when you press them in. That's the front of the cabinet. Light gun on the side. Light gun is an OT Mark light gun. Added that allows me to play games like Operation Wolf and any other shooting games, and it works really well. This is the version with recoil. It's a USB, and then it has a power supply to give you that kickback when you're pressing the button. Onto the back of the cabinet. So in the back, you can see I created a mount to hold the LCD, and I can move that up and down if need be. I added the light gun bar at the top, which you can see up the top here, and fitted that in place. There's my shelf with my keyboard that slides in and out. You can see my coin mechanism there with the light. As I said, the coin mechanism works. I really gutted everything out. There was a control board, a jammer board in here, which I've removed. I've got a Raspberry Pi. The Raspberry Pi is what has my games on. My games are on RetroArch, and I use Emulation Station with the comic theme front end, and I'll show you that in a bit. That's the power supply for the light gun. I've also added a Game Capture Elgato card. This allows me to capture the screen of the game when I'm playing. That then feeds into my PC, and when I'm creating any high scores, I can record them and submit them for review. There's a bucket there which collects the 20p's when I use the coin mechanism. I also added my own speaker system. So I've got a LePi amplifier which connects to a speaker you can just about see at the top. I upgraded the speaker, put a decent one in the top, and that gives me some good sound. And then I've also got it connected into a subwoofer. There's a few sockets in here. I could put I have got a power supply there which gives me 5 volts and 12 volts. I could tidy it up a bit more, but just for ease of use and setup, I've got a few sockets and a few 5-volt supplies. Could be done a bit neater, but it works well for me. There's the strip light there. It's really bright, and that is what I use to illuminate the marquee, and then it also gives me some light in the back of the cabinet. That's the innards of my cabinet. If I then come around and show you the front end, so there you can see my comic theme front end, and this has the different categories that I can put the games I want to play in. I haven't, I could put 10,000 games on it if I really wanted to. I think my SD card's 256 gig in the Raspberry Pi, but I don't fully utilize that. I just have a few of my favorite games with the different consoles that they're emulating. Nintendo 64, you can see they're all in there, and I can add more if I want to. SNES, light gun, so I've set up a menu for all my light gun games. I've also set up a menu for my racing games, and if I want to play the racing games, then in the bottom of the cabinet, which you can't see down here where the coins are collected, I have a steering wheel. It's a 6-inch steering wheel, and that, with a little Allen key, I can remove the spinner and put the steering wheel on there, and I can have authentic steering for the racing games. The main menu I really play is arcade. So I go into arcade, here's my menu. I've got a video preview of any of the games I want to play. Got it all set up to save the high scores. Lots and lots of tweaking and programming. And I've probably got a couple hundred of my favourite games here. There's Arkanoid, so when I want to use the spinner, I can move the little platform with the spinner. and the software works really well. I've got this really to play the arcade games, so it's not super powerful. It won't play a lot, you know, the more recent games. I haven't got sort of PS2 emulated or anything on here, but for what I need it for, it's just right. I have thought about in the future putting a PC in, which give me a lot more power, but for a minute I don't need that. And that's my arcade cabinet. The other thing I've done, a couple of mods, is I did put a AC power switch on the side. This gives me easy access to power the cabinet on or off, and I added some wheels on the bottom, so when I want to pull it out to work in the back, I'm not straining my back to pull the cabinet out. And that's Dennis the Menace's arcade cabinet so far. Time to get some high scores.